Hi guys, it's Kian. Today I want to talk a bit about practical life skills. Um, so as somebody who is I think compared to most people, I'm probably considered chronically online, but compared to the people who are chronically online, I am on the relatively offline side of the spectrum. Um, and what I mean by that is I'm somebody who definitely gets being in your head too much or being too absorbed in like things that I suppose is sort of like I'm kind of out of touch with grass, if you want to put it that way. Like I'm not always that way, but it's easy for me in periods of being very online or very self absorbed in my own head sometimes to forget that things in the real material world exist. And so, one thing that I have been considering or thinking about rather is the idea that there are some life skills that are practical to learn. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying the word practical today. Yeah, today. But I've been thinking about the idea that there are some life skills that like it is gonna be useful for you to learn no matter what. And I think realistically speaking, these would have some overlap for most people, but it would probably make more sense for you to curate a list for yourself that makes sense to your context. Um, and so let me explain what I mean by practical life skills and why I want to talk about them. So sometimes I get into this like self-absorbed episodes in my head, and I think the thing that kind of makes it provides a bit of like more of an obstacle than it really needs to be to kind of just getting back into the real world or like touching grass is that sometimes I don't like to do things that I don't feel will be useful. It's like if I'm gonna do something that is not useful anyway, or like not perceived to be useful, like I don't want to touch literal grass. Um, and so why not stay on my phone and continue watching whatever drama or TV show I'm interested in, even though I know it's not great for the state that I'm in to continue watching the next I don't know how many episodes of whatever drama I'm on. So this is not like a blanket like all the time thing, but there are periods where I get back into kind of being very online slash in my head, and so the way that I've kind of thought to get around it is to do things that are in real life and like actually functionally useful for me as a person. Um, and if I need to learn anything, then like I can like if I have an urge to learn something but I don't know what I want to learn, then I can always go back to this list of like useful skills and work my way through them. Does that make sense? Um, so I realize what I'm saying is actually a very specific situation. Um, but yeah, it's kind of like when you're in a weird space of kind of being bored and you need to do something and you know you want to do something that is a bit more helpful to you than whatever else you have been doing, but you don't really know what to do. I feel like if you have a list of life skills that you want to practice or you want to learn, that might be a good thing to look back on for reference when you are in such a mood. And so this is a list of my life skills that I think is practical for me to learn, and I'm not sure whether they will be relevant to everyone. Well, I think there's definitely things in it that is useful to everyone, but I also can think of a few life skills that will be practical for other people to learn in which I'm not interested in. So I'm just gonna stop rambling and just tell you my list of um, practical and useful life skills that I'm aware of and I fall back on when I'm kind of just in my head and need to get out of a funk. So, I think one of the way I think about it is, and the way you can go about thinking about it if you want to make your own list, is just what material things do you functionally need, like your body physically needs, and how can doing so improve your life, or how, like, is there anything you can do in these things that you can't run away from, you have to do, and whether by actually doing the thing, learning how to do it better, or yeah, whichever it is. um so just very very obvious things, like, we need to eat. And so I think one of the most useful life skills is, and I'm going to phrase it in a slightly odd way, but is figuring out how to get sufficiently nutritious food into your body. And what I mean by that is, it can look like a bunch of different skills, which you can kind of pick and choose depending on what you personally like to do or don't like to do, or like to find easier to do or find more difficult to do. And what I mean by that is, you can, for example, learn how to cook, or you can figure out a way to find out what's the cheapest or most nutritious way for you to get takeout. Or you can, learn how to meal prep, or you can learn how to do a bunch of, like, maybe you buy some food and then you figure out how to bulk it up or whatnot. Like, there's a lot of different ways. Other things that you can potentially learn are like how to do grocery shopping in a way that makes sense for yourself. So if you have, like, if you live in a family or with roommates, there's a lot of people, you can maybe want to buy, you can, like, maybe save by buying things in bulk, which is what my mom does when she cooks for the whole family. And it's definitely a skill that I do not currently have, because when I think about food, I often think about just for myself. Because if it's for the whole family, it's usually my mom taking care of such stuff, so it's not really a skill that I've learned. But then again, it's also not really a skill that I feel like I necessarily have to learn, because I don't think I'll really be in a situation where I will have to plan for food for a lot of people. Um, but, like, for example, when I first started working and I was eating a lot of food outside, bearing in mind that I was somebody who mostly ate my meals at home because my mom cooked a lot, um, to save money and all that kind of stuff, I had to figure out a way that I could buy food outside that was not always expensive, like averages out to be like a reasonable amount of money, was tasty enough for me to not feel like it's a chore to eat it, but also was, sufficiently nutritious enough. Like, I was getting vegetables, I was getting, like, some protein, I wasn't eating too much fried stuff or too much sweet stuff or too much carbs. that kind of thing. Like there's a lot of avenues you can explore with it, but I would say the one big useful thing is just figuring out ways that make it convenient or easy. Convenient maybe not the right word. Finding out ways that make it easy for you to get food that is nutritious enough into your body, and like whatever that turns up as, whatever piques your interest, learn about it or try it out. So like sometimes when I get into a funk, I think I mentioned it in my previous video about my creative process log. I got stuck on making stuff one day, and then I made granola because that was something practical that I could do, and you useful results. I'm still eating the granola. It's good for portion sizing, because if I eat sliced bread, I don't always want a whole slice of bread, but if I eat granola, I can kind of like reduce or increase the amount of food I want to have that day depending on how hungry I am. So that's one. The second practical life skill I have been trying to learn, or like have actually been doing so for quite a while, is related to clothes. So I mean, in the modern world, I think it's a given that you have to wear clothes. Like, doesn't matter what kind, but you kind of have to be clothed outside, otherwise you'll be committing a crime. And so what that means is, like, there's a lot of functional things that come with having clothes, right? For example, how to buy them, what to buy, what kind of materials do you like or dislike, what works for your weather and climate and what doesn't. Um, there's also things like, how do you wash your clothes? How do you iron your clothes? Would you like to mend your clothes, or are you more inclined to just figure out how to maybe wash and take care of your clothes better so that you don't really have to get to a point where it wears out so fast that you have to mend them or throw them away? I'm just listing out examples. These are not meant to stress you out. And I'm saying that because hearing myself say it is kind of like low-key stressing me out a bit. But the reason why I have these buckets of things to think about is kind of just so, like, if I'm like, okay, is there anything practical that I can be doing now? So for example, sometimes when I don't know what to do but I need to feel productive, I find something in my wardrobe that needs mending and just take out some needle and thread and just sew that thing up. The socks that I'm wearing, for example, right now, I have no idea where the mend is, but the socks that I'm wearing, these stripy ones, I've I've done it in two parts. One is in the front of the big toe where what I usually wear out my socks, and one is kind of at the back where at my ankle area, where it rubs against the shoe. And previously, so I've done socks like maybe twice, and they're both on the same pair of socks. And like just now, the granola making thing, I've made granola like twice. Before making granola, the thing that I was kind of practicing on was just making one particular kind of pasta, which is aglio olio. Like, I'm not saying like you need to do a lot about this, but it's just kind of like, if you need to feel productive and there's really nothing that you know or particularly want to do, like, just do one of those things. Doesn't matter that is really minuscule. You're still building up kind of a database or library of experience that ultimately will still be useful because it's just practical things that you will eventually use in real life. So why not build up XP doing it? So um other kind of, so if you don't know how to mend clothes, of course you can learn how to do it. I didn't know how to darn socks, although I know how to sew. um so what I did is I just looked up a YouTube tutorial. Like I looked up a bunch of YouTube tutorials on how to darn socks, and I just followed. um and I didn't have all the materials, but I made do with what I have. So like I didn't have a proper like mushroom thing for you to flip your socks inside out on so that you can done it on a curved surface, and I just took a massage ball that I have and used it as the base. Does it work perfectly? No. But are you gonna be great at a skill when you try it for the first time? Probably not either. So like you don't really need to bother with getting the right materials and everything. You can kind of just do what you can with what you have, in the amount of time and attention span or energy that you have. um and so another thing that I found quite useful, and I realized was quite useful, was ironing. Um, so I'm still not great at ironing. When I first started working and I wore more shirts and had to iron them, I did look up tutorials on how to best press a shirt. I don't really follow it. I just kind of do the way that I find most comfortable. But one thing that I did find was particularly useful for me is knowing how hot my iron can go without damaging the shirt. Because I don't know if you know this, and I'm not saying this in a demeaning way. I didn't know this for a very long time. But if you go too hot on the iron, you can cause like really shiny marks that you can't get out. Depending on what material also that you have. So a lot of synthetics are quite bad with a hot iron. Um, and that's only something that I found out over time, and like messing up a few shirts, is that like not only do I dislike how polyester on like mostly polyester, I don't really have nylon clothes, but like polyester feels on my body. I don't really like how it irons either. Like I can't go too hot or it will turn shiny and damage the look of the item. But if I don't heat the iron up high enough, it doesn't get rid of creases at all. And like adding more water doesn't really seem to help it either. But cotton is really nice to work with. Sure, it will crease quite fast after you iron it, but a cotton shirt that has been ironed once and then kind of creased as it's worn still looks better than wearing a cotton shirt that has like not been ironed at all, um, and then just like further creased as you wear it. Like past me would think it doesn't matter whether you iron a shirt or not because it's gonna get creased as you wear it. But now I think there is a difference, although it's quite slight. Um, but it's like if you don't think there's a difference, then don't bother. But like if you feel that there is a difference, then maybe it's useful for you to figure out how to iron it. And I feel like the fact that you have to practically work with the thing, like the material, the clothing, kind of forces you to learn more about like what you have, what you own, and what you like or dislike about it. Like, would I have realized that some of the shirts that I bought for work were rayon or polyester or a mix of whatever material, or that I hate elastane? No, I wouldn't have known it because I would not have messed up while ironing them and then kind of be forced to read the clothing label to be like, oh, am I ironing it too hot? And in reading the clothing label to figure out what's the ironing instructions, I kind of like come across the material composition, and now I'm at a place where generally I don't buy things if they're not 100% cotton, just because that's my personal preference. I don't really like clothes that are not cotton. Um, yeah, and like I'm not even going into things like how you want to pick the pieces to look a certain way and whatnot. I'm just talking about boring shit. like ironing your clothes. Also, funny thing is, back when I lived in the university hostels, we had shared laundry rooms, and it was quite funny because we would often get emails sent out, or maybe it was Facebook messages. I mean Facebook group, like not messages, like status updates. But we will get reminders to use the washing machine properly, and then at some point somebody at a few points actually people taught us how to empty the lint from the washing machine so that it doesn't overheat, or it actually washes your load better. And then I think at some point, I don't know whether it was like all the residential people teaching us this, or like I just found out from watching YouTube, like not to put too much soap, like detergent. And then for my roommates, we figured out that if you use powder detergent, you can like add water before you dump it in, to kind of make sure it dissolves and doesn't leave like random white specks on your clothes, which is what happens. Like little things like that, like nitty gritty, boring, everyday things that are actually quite, I wouldn't say important necessarily, but then like if you do them right, it makes your life a bit easier. Um, and here, right is really just like right for you, or like easy for you, whatever that is. Yeah, and like, did I know how to use a dryer before I went to residential college? No. Did I learn how to use a dryer? Yes. Did I realize that I don't really enjoy dryers? Also, yes. Um, or like, did I realize that I actually, you know, I don't know, hate folding clothes? And so the only way I will fold clothes is if my whole load of laundry is done and I immediately do all of it. Because if I just leave it there, I won't get around to doing it. Um, yeah, little things like that. Like, I don't know, if you have time and you want to fold your clothes better, look up how to fold a t-shirt in the fastest way possible. Or don't fold your t-shirts. But to avoid them being wrinkly, I don't know, air dry them, hang them out to dry instead of like letting them dry from the dryer. Because if you take those out and you don't lay them flat, they will get crumpled really terribly. Things like that. And so the first was figuring out how to put food into your body in adequate and nutritious ways. Second thing is like just practical maintenance of how to put clothes on your body. And I feel like for some people, learning how to drive would fall into this list of practical skills. But where I live, it's not very important to know how to drive. Um, and so I guess a bigger category of it would just be figuring out a way to move yourself around. And a subset of that is figuring out how to move your body. And I think the thing about moving your body for me is less necessarily exercise, but more about keeping your body happy. So it's kind of like you gotta wash your clothes, right? To maintain them. Like, what are the things that you need or want or find easy to do for your body to maintain it in a condition that you like? So for me, things like filing my nails instead of cutting them with a nail clipper, because I like the smooth edges. I don't like the jagged, um, sharp edges from using nail clippers. There's a crow over there. Or like realizing that I might go for a walk, but only if the weather is not terribly hot. So maybe going for a walk at night is better. And it works out in Singapore because, it's relatively safe. Actually, no, I would say it's quite safe. Um, and so if I want to get some exercise in, that would be a way to do it. Or like knowing that like I had to learn how to do yoga poses in order to do yoga, for example. Um, because like it's a skill, right? It's not something that you just know. Yeah. And so I think like it doesn't matter what the actual thing you're learning is or the actual thing you're doing is. Like I didn't learn yoga by learning, okay, this is a pose or that is a pose or whatever. I just followed like yoga with Adrian, one video at a time. Like for example, if that day I only have 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I just look for a video that fit that amount of time. And I tried to copy whatever she was doing on screen as best as I could. And then that was it, that was done. And over many years of doing that over and over and over and over, it's kind of gotten to a point where I don't have expert knowledge, obviously, of like how to do yoga, for example, but I know enough um, to do some simple poses to not injure myself. I know enough to like know maybe in certain poses, these are the points that you should look out for to kind of focus on so that you are working out or stretching or engaging whatever it is that that pose is meant to do, etc. And so I feel like these are things that will never leave you. You can always come back to them because it's just, in a way, I see it as making a bank for yourself in which you always deposit stuff. And like, sure, maybe you deposit like 10 cents at a time, but over time that accumulates. Like, this isn't a bank where the money will flow out necessarily. Whenever you make deposits, it will only accumulate interest. And so it's always a nice thing to know that you can fall back on. Yeah. And it's getting kind of long, so I will just end this video by saying, do you have any life skills that you think is useful to learn? Whether for just yourself or you think in general it will apply to a lot of people. Let me know in the comments below. I'm still, like, while I'm working on all of this, I'm still curious as to if there's anything else that I missed out. Because, sometimes it's boring to go back to the same stuff. And I do want to learn new things. But also I'm lazy sometimes. So I guess we'll see. So that's it for today's video. I'll see you next time. Bye.